Mr. Brennan,
Present.
Mr. Rickaman,
Here.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Present.
Mr. Vine,
Here.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Mayor Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rep. McDowell, you bless us with a word.
Yes. Eternal and gracious God, for this day and for all you've done for us, for life, health, and strength, for the promise of your presence in our lives. We thank you for all of the rich and manifold blessings you've given to us. We ask for your grace and your mercy to be with those who are hospitalized. And we pray for Shanique and Eric and their family as they struggle with, and of course, provide healing for this family. For all of the many workers in our city, for those names that we don't know, but we know of their conditions, we ask your grace to shower them. Shower them with grace, with love, and yet with mercy. Allow this city of ours, as we meet today, to feel and sense your presence as we go through this agenda. Lord, we ask it and claim it in your name. Amen.
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 Is there a motion? I'm sorry, any amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move we adopt the agenda with the amendment of adding item 20, receipt of legal advice related to pending and threatened potential claim pursuant to 30-4-70A2 Constant Car Wash.
Is there a second to the amended agenda?
Second.
Any discussion with the previous question? Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye, thank you, ma'am.
You're
Is there
welcome.
a motion to approve the minutes of February 16?
So move.
Second,
Second.
discussion. With the previous question, clerk, call roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Aye.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye, and thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Mayor Benjamin, we can proceed at this point with city council discussion and action items with a few presentations to include our COVID-19 update as we regularly do. And if you have any comments, Mayor Benjamin, preceding the situational report by Mr. Tinsley, our emergency management director, we can hear those at this time.
Sure, and I might also make a comment before the public art presentation as well.
Yes, sir.
This is no, I think we're all very encouraged with some of the data we're seeing, and as it relates to deceleration and the number of infections that we're seeing, and we certainly want to make sure we're doing all we can to hold the line, to continue to communicate well with all of our partners in the governmental and the sectorally, to encourage vaccination and pro-vaccination messaging. We're heading in the right direction. We've got to make sure we continue to do just that. Obviously, saw the governor amended the executive order, removing the last call language just yesterday, and hoping and praying that can be handled responsibly by all parties involved, and it still allows us to see the deceleration we've seen. So again, thank you, Teresa and the team and the council and the director Tinsley for the work we've been doing here. We still got a long road to hoe, but we can do it. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Director Tinsley?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Madam City Manager. Additional information is in your inbox as well as the latest report out on the current situation for COVID-19. Worldwide, we are over 114 million global cases of COVID-19 with over 2.5 million deaths, unfortunately. According to CDC, as of March 1st report out, over 28 million confirmed cases in the U.S. with 511,839 deaths. In South Carolina's confirmed case count stands as of today's report at 445,523 cases. We're just about to go over the 6 million mark of tests to date. That should occur at the next report out. New cases as of today's report is 496 to our state. That gives us a 4.6% positivity rate. There were 13 newly confirmed deaths as this report, which brings our state total to 7,606. As far as here in Richland County, our case count stands at 35,830. We had 39 new cases as the last report out. Over the last 14-day report, Richland County had 1,530 new cases. And that's down slightly. We continue to trend down as do other counties in the state. The last time at our last meeting, we were at 2,390. So we're now averaging just over 100 cases each day. That's a rolling average over a 14-day period. Deaths due to COVID in Richland County stand at 452. For this report out, that 14-day cycle, the highest zip code was 29210 with 182 cases. As far as the Richland County's 14-day recent disease activity incident rate, it remains at medium, although it is continuing to trend down. At the latest report, we were at 322.1 cases per 100,000 with a 5.2% positivity rate. That's down from our last meeting where we were over 500. As far as the state recovery rate is up slightly. It's estimated at 90.4%. The state case fatality rate is estimated at 1.70. That's up slightly also. And as the mayor said, daily case counts continue to trend downward. This trend is anticipated to continue. Hospitalizations continue to trend downward as well. The bed utilization rate as of today's report out is just over 75%, and the ICU bed utilization rate is just over 70%. So there are currently 706 patients hospitalized due to COVID-19. That's down from over 1,200 at our last meeting. DHEC continues to receive vaccines and distribute those. They've received total doses received to date is over 1,169,300. And those in our state having already received the vaccine, either first or second dose, is 952,860. In Richland County, 85,537 people have been vaccinated. Also of note, the mayor just noted at the press conference from the governor, DHEC will begin phase 1B beginning Monday, March 8th. Those are folks anyone over age 55 and up, people age 16 to 64 with more high-risk medical conditions and frontline essential workers. They anticipate phase 1C will begin on approximately April 12th, with phase 2 beginning on approximately May 3rd. So we are moving in a very good direction. So if any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
I would add and thank Director Tinsley for his ongoing efforts, particularly as the vaccine has continued to roll out in our state, and his ability to work directly with DHEC and others to ensure also that our frontline staff is in the line. So we are working on that as recent as a few hours ago when he and I were talking, so that we're prepared as the next phase begins. So I just wanted you all to know that. we are making sure our frontline team is in line.
Ms. Wilson, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
had a quick question for Harry. Harry, we had talked in the past about mobile units giving out shots. Have you heard any more about that from the county and the Prisma about the possibility of that happening in the future?
Yes, sir. We are continuing to work that process, Councilman. We had a phone call this week, last week, to discuss with DHEC with Prisma. We're going to have a follow-up call here shortly to work out some of the logistics on the planning for that, and then the allocations of the vaccines and the supplies for those. But we had an encouraging conversation, and I'm anticipating that we'll get that finalized here in short order.
Thank you. I appreciate your leadership and coordination on that.
Harry, if I could just jump in on that. So Councilman Brennan, I know that Prisma has the mobile unit. It actually will be at CIU this weekend. My understanding in talking to Mr. Ford, they've been asked to do some of the more rural areas before they kind of come center city. But as Harry mentioned, and I'd asked Mr. Ford actually just yesterday, if we could coordinate and make sure that I think we all have probably better pipelines into getting directly to the citizens who need it. So I asked if they could help coordinate with Harry so that when we know about places that we can coordinate and get the word out to the community. So I know, Harry, if they don't specifically bring that up to you, if you can bring that up in that meeting, and I've mentioned it several times to Mr. Ford, but I know the mobile unit is there. I think it's just also the availability of the vaccines, which from my understanding now that Johnson & Johnson is going to be coming, there might be a change in as far as the availability.
Yes, ma'am. You're correct. The availability was of a concern. I think some of the recent weather events throughout the U.S. and supply chains were slowed, but that should be rectified. And I did talk to Mr. Ford as well on that subject, and the nursing leader for Prisma that helps with the basic flu vaccines to those areas every year. So there is a mechanism in place to do that. We just wanted to make sure we could get the plan finalized to do that.
I'm sorry, Ed, I was on mute. Please.
We've also partnered with Providence Hospital and the CEO there. We've surveyed and assessed 3 communities within the 29203 and 29204. We are helping and giving folk a lending hand in securing their vaccinations from Providence. We've already canvassed the Lion Street community. We also canvassed the ML King community last Saturday. We will canvass another community that we have not identified yet. Those persons have been identified, registered, and of course, Providence is given the vaccination. So that project has worked out real well and continues to work well. We know that there has been, as Tamika said, I talked to Vince about 3 weeks ago in the mobile unit aspect, but we also recognize that there are a number of senior citizens who doesn't have transportation. We have transportation provided for them if they need that. Providence gives us every week a number of spots for persons to come in and be vaccinated. So that continues to work well. In addition to what Vince has proposed and what Prisma is doing, that's a positive sign, I think.
Other comments? I think hopefully and prayerfully we'll see a great deal of concern and angst relieved, not just with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but hopefully we'll see supply chain issues with both Moderna and Pfizer also beginning to improve. We're going to see obviously a significant probably rush, hopefully, beginning of next week when phase 1B begins as well. And those are all good things. I do know that particularly Will, as it relates to the mobile units, that Prisma and others are being very data driven, really trying to focus on zip codes where there's been a lack of individuals getting access to the vaccine, and overlaying that with the reach from folks like us, local elected officials who identify these challenges. So kind of attacking it from an IQ and the EQ level. And I think it seems like it's coming together. And Vince and others have been doing really great work there. Let's continue pushing in that regard. And just as we all have for the last a year or so, keep encouraging people to still remain vigilant and doing all that we're supposed to do to make sure these numbers continue to decline the way that they should, and that even if they don't, that those who might become infected are more resilient in their body's response to it by having been vaccinated. So we still got some work to do, but let's remain wholly optimistic. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Harry, Teresa, and everyone else, just thank y'all. Let's keep pressing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we have two presentations. The public presentation, I don't know, we'll probably get to it right on time, but we have it second because Dr. Donaldson, those have been involved in some exciting things today, and we need to give him a little time to get with us as he's part of item 4. So with that, we'll start with item 3, which is a Columbia Water Resiliency Update. And our Assistant City Manager for Columbia Water, Clint Shealy, will present. Mr. Duvall had been talking with us recently about, things that have been occurring across the nation and how prepared are we after witnessing everything that Texas has endured. And prior to that, I think also in Texas, there was some security breach issues with water treatment plants. And so we are well aware of those events. We follow them closely. Clint and I have been talking about them as they were happening. And I think Mr. Duvall was right to suggest that we share with you all and the citizens just how prepared we try to be. So with that, Clint, do you want to take it from there?
Yes, ma'am. Be glad to. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you all for just a few minutes of your time this afternoon to talk about our water utility and our resilience. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. So bear with me just one moment. Got a few slides we put together, and but we'll try not to PowerPoint you to death this afternoon, but I thought it would be interesting to share information with you all and the general public that may have questions about, how prepared we are as a utility. So hopefully you're able to see my slides.
Then Clint, I think the council has these slides in their inbox too, if they so prefer to look that way.
Yes, ma'am, they do.
Okay.
I will read in your packet to take a look at. First of all, I want to thank our Columbia Water team and Sylvia and her IT staff for helping put together this information. It's comprehensive and will be a good read for you. We won't dwell too much on each slide, but did want to just take a moment to share the highlights with you. As Ms. Wilson said, infrastructure has been in the news, whether it's power resiliency or water supply resiliency or cyber security and protection from attacks. That's really been in the news in the last month or so. And I think what's also overarching above and beyond that, just the pandemic that we're in, and makes us think of our most critical and key asset, which is our people. And how we have gone about protecting them. I think you're aware of the measures that we've been taking to keep our staff that have been working on the front line safe and to protect them from any community spread from the virus at the workplace. And I'm really proud of the work they've done to continue providing essential services and to protect each other and to just care for each other throughout the pandemic. But Obviously the recent extreme cold weather, that Arctic blast that get down into Texas and Mississippi, really had a major impact on what's happening there, and we hear about it in the news. I was listening to NPR on the way home last night, and they were talking about Jackson, Mississippi, 2 weeks later, still without drinking water in several areas. And so something that we want to make sure that we are prepared for anything like that that might happen, and also talk about the cybersecurity breach that happened in Florida. And I wanted to start there. On February 5th, at a smaller water plant in Florida, a hacker was actually able to access a chemical feed system through what we call the SCADA system, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, was able to hack that and adjust one of the treating compounds that adjust the pH and overdose. And so that water would have been harmful had it gotten out of the treatment plant and distributed to customers. So certainly got everybody's attention, both from an IT perspective, but a drinking water perspective, made national headlines. What we've learned about that is the utility was using, and I don't mean to throw rocks at them, but I want to just contrast how we're a little bit different, very much outdated Windows operating system that had not been updated. Their computers were connected directly to the internet with no firewall. Staff were using the same password to remote access from when they weren't at the plant. A lot of fundamental basic no-nos there that we simply don't do in Columbia. So we keep our operating systems updated so that we can get the security updates and have fully supported software. Our IT department does a great job supporting both us and our SCADA system integrators and making sure that we've got appropriate firewalls in place. Something's called a DMZ surrounding our treatment plants that would prevent that type of hack. And then, obviously the password protections and logins, and not having our SCADA computers that control our dosing and operations directly connected to the external internet is really, really important. So that's been a position that we have taken for a long time, ever since we've been using computers with the advent of the Internet of Things. It is something that we're very aware of, and Sylvia and her team are prepared to brief us in a lot more detail beyond my depth of understanding in executive session if we want to go into the great specificity about how our systems are protected, but this is what we were able to share publicly. And I did want to mention that even if, Lord forbid, we were to have a similar attack, we've got procedures in place that use that most critical asset of our human capital. Our operators are there, and they are doing manual checks routinely of our water quality before it ever leaves the gate of the treatment plant. And so we've got online meters, but even those, if they happen to be corrupted, our laboratory instruments and our staff doing those laboratory tests would catch any type of anomaly that was happening before that compromised water left the facility. So we've got the IT security in place that we need to, but we've also got the operators that are there 24/7, 365, monitoring our customers' water to make sure that we are both in compliance and that nothing harmful leaves the gate of the treatment facility. So that's just a little bit about the cybersecurity. And I'll pause there for a moment to see if there are any questions.
Can't see everyone's hands. If you have a question for Clint, please go ahead and ask. All right.
Yes, sir. Well, hearing none, we'll move on to what happened in the Midwest with that Arctic blast and sustained cold weather. One of the things that I think is important to note is that weather impact affected both generation capability and transmission capability in those states, and particularly Texas is the one we hear about it most. Because of lack of power, some of the treatment facilities did not have standby generation, and they were relying upon line power to operate, treat, and pump water. Also, I think the icing on the roads impacted the ability to deliver treating compounds to the facilities. There were multiple water main breaks, home plumbing leaks because of that deep, prolonged freeze. And then simply customers leaving their faucets dripping can create can exert a demand on a system that is it can be higher than normal. I remember in my consulting life working with a coastal utility that always shared with us that their highest demand day, their peak demand in history, occurred during a severe winter cold, not during a summer drought. And so it really can tax your water delivery, treatment and delivery system when you do have a lot of main breaks, as we well know. Our 2 water plants obviously were powered by Dominion Energy. Dominion is part of the Eastern Interconnection Grid. There's a Western Interconnection Power Grid, and then there's Texas is a little bit different in how that grid is interconnected or not interconnected and how power is regulated there. Because of our interconnectivity and being in the Eastern Grid, Dominion has the opportunity to, if they had issues with their generation facilities, to pull power into the grid into our locale from other parts of the grid in an emergency situation. So just from a grid reliability standpoint, we are in better shape than the folks in Texas were. We also have multiple feeds coming to our treatment facilities, and that gives us a lot more reliable power and redundancy there. I want to point out that as part of the 2018 America's Water Infrastructure Act, each water utility in the United States was required to conduct a risk and resiliency assessment. And so we recently completed this work just last year, and it analyzed our threats, and we looked at what our vulnerabilities are. This work had not been formally required since what was called a vulnerability assessment that was post 9/11/2001. So very due. We look at our emergency plan and update it every year, but this was a more formalized process and a submittal to EPA that identified short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements. Our particular assessment recommended that we continue to improve our physical security at our treatment facilities, at both of our water treatment plants. They're gated, they're fenced, we have guards, we have cameras, but there are additional physical security measures that were recommended as we proceed into the future. Strengthening cybersecurity and our SCADA system security always at the forefront. And so our IT group was a big part of this assessment as well. And of course, based on what we went through in 2015, resilience of our source water and our water supply very much at the forefront of what we need to be doing and are considering doing. I'll also point out as we went through that process, a lot of the weaknesses that we had in our water distribution system were found in October of 2015, whether it's an aerial creek crossing, something of that nature. And as we have recovered and repaired, we've been boring under the creek, boring under the river, under those water bodies so that our infrastructure is not washed away during a flooding event. So we're more protected, and that was one of the things that the consultant recognized that we had made significant improvements in. As you well know, we brief you anytime there's hurricane preparedness or inclement weather, and our staff has gotten really good at that, at being prepared for these things. Thankfully, we had a fairly quiet hurricane season in our locality last year, but we do have backup generators at our drinking water plants. We can run at full capacity at our treatment plants. We've got over 4 megawatts of generating power, both at Lake Murray and at the Columbia Canal plant. And those are recent improvements that we've made. So that investment pays off during power outages. Again, we've got very reliable power and redundant feeds, but we also have backup generation, diesel generators that are tested routinely. We keep an adequate supply of diesel fuel on hand, contained on hand in the event that we may need to use those generators for an extended period of time. And we top those fuel supplies off if there's any pending storm that is forecast. In our distribution system, we also have generators at our major pumping stations at our smaller pumping units, pumping stations, we have mobile generators that we can take around as needed. But the heavy lifters, the one that move, the stations that move water throughout the significant parts of our distribution system, they have standby generation at the facility full time. And we also top off our treating chemical, our treating compounds, and test our generators and communication equipment anytime there's inclement weather forecast, so that we don't run into an issue where the roads are icy and we can't get the treating compounds that we need. We keep, our regulatory agency requires us to have space for a 30-day supply on hand. So we keep a good supply of treating compounds on hand for any prolonged, duration event. And certainly things like Hugo and other weather events historically have proven that to be wise investment. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk briefly about our canal water supply recovery efforts. Obviously, we've reached agreement with FEMA. We're working through our environmental assessment, and that is progressing nicely. The head gates are also a part of our overall recovery. That is being funded through CDBG mitigation grants, and that design is in progress. So those efforts are moving forward. That's a long game effort. But we're every day we've got our wheel to the plow trying to make that happen, our shoulder to the plow trying to make that happen. We also working on our resilient water supply project. We briefed you just a few meetings ago about our building resilience and infrastructure grant, the BRIC grant that went in. We're waiting to hear whether we're successful with our grant application. We'll find out in just a few months whether or not we'll be awarded that grant. It's a $45 million project. Pull water directly out of the Broad River, and would decrease our reliance upon our Columbia Canal moving forward. Also wanted to talk just a little bit about our flood protection for our Metro wastewater treatment plant. We've got a FEMA flood recovery project to add some generation capacity there. We've also got redundancy and transmission and distribution feed from Dominion, but we're looking at adding some generators, some natural gas generators out at the Metro treatment facility that would help us in the event of a natural disaster or a power outage. We're also looking at strengthening levees around the treatment plant to help with flood protection. And just like our water treatment plants, protected from an IT standpoint, and they do their normal storm preparations and to prepare for unlikelihood of power outages or lack of chemical delivery. So folks do a really good job there. In our wastewater collection system, we've been very intentional about getting backup power generation at all of our major pumping stations. And the majority of our minor pumping stations in the collection system have permanently mounted generators. We're transitioning to natural gas where that is available. The very few that don't have emergency generation in place, there are plans to add generation in the near future. So that's part of our overall attempts to address and minimize sanitary sewer overflows and improve the strength of our sanitary sewer collection system. So with that, I'll stop talking and see if y'all have any particular questions about our preparedness in general.
Questions for Clint? Howard?
Clint, I just want to thank you for that very good briefing. I've had several people ask me about the condition and resilience to the Columbia water and sewer system after hearing the news and seeing the news in Texas. And I think it's reassuring to me, and I know it's reassuring to the public to the extent that we have put in resilience to the Columbia water systems.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Clint? Ms. Devine?
Mr. Mayor, just a suggestion, because I think this was a wonderful briefing and a lot of great information. If Clint and his staff can work with our PR staff, I think having this like an interview of Clint on Channel 2 and maybe also making it available for social media could help. I'm sorry, Columbia's finest are driving by my office. But I think it'd be a great way to just get this information out to the masses to folks who don't watch our meetings, but this is a lot of great information that I think would answer a lot of questions that people have had. As Councilman Duvall said, over the last few weeks, I know I've gotten questions, but even the questions we're not getting, this is just really, it addresses a lot of things that I think people will be interested to know what we're working on.
I think that'd be great. And I think some really carefully curated questions that help us get to the fact of the matter. I know, and I know you all remember very vividly, Teresa and Clinton, Joey and Missy and everyone else. I mean, some of the investments we made just before 2015. We immediately saw the importance of preparing for whatever may come, and some extra investments, some extra costs saved our taxpayers and ratepayers significant. And we learned a great deal about having redundancy, certainly at the canal, and the amazing leadership of our staff, and even our firefighters, as we were just really just doing it possibly just to save lives. Military stepping up with ROPUs at Baptist, and I mean we learned. And what I love about our staff, the folks at Columbia Water and Teresa and others, is that we don't just learn for the sake of learning. We actually do something with it, and we keep on improving. We keep on improving, and I think what you just saw, and I think that's a great idea, Tamika. More and more of our citizens need to know that we're making the responsible investments in the system, and that they're being done for posterity, for long-term investments. And as much as we can do to get that information out, it'd be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Will do.
Well, thank you, Clint. Much appreciated.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and with that, Henry, Assistant City Manager Henry Simons will, yes, sir.
Just a word.
Yes,
Clint,
sir.
yeah, may I say a word?
Yes, of course.
Clint, let me just say thank you for this report. But in addition to what you reported today, as you know, with the cold and freezing weather a couple of weeks ago, we had several pipes to burst in streets and that sort of thing. And some of those things reported to you. And of course, thank you for your due diligence in getting those things fixed. I think the residents, I think you gave them a real personal conversation when you had the ability to talk with them. They were in dire straits, that several communities were being flooded, and you responded very quickly, and the team responded. So just a word of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Reverend McDowell.
Mr. Davis.
I just wanted to echo Ed's comments. We kind of move around a lot, and I think he's aware of the number of calls I've passed on to him, especially when I do run across a number of leaks in the roads, on the streets, and the fact that we did make those investments is, I think, better our capacity and ability as a city to be responsive, to go get in and address the needs as they see fit. And so I think we can always make a case and justify the past investments. And we also, I think, are getting a pretty good insight on where we need to go next. And that's one thing that's really going to help staff and the city with planning, knowing some of the unexpecteds that do occur beyond our control, beyond staff's control. But the fact that we continue to nurture and update the infrastructure system, that I think keeps us on better footing to be responsive.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right. Any other questions or comments for Clint? we know this is a process. It's a lot of innovation going on. AMI, a lot of iteration. We don't get everything perfect right, but it takes leadership and a lot of commitment. So thanks to everybody involved. Let's keep pushing.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Clint. Thank you again. At this time, we will move into our public art presentation, and Mr. Simons, Assistant City Manager Henry Simons, will let us know if our other presenters are ready, to include Dr. Donaldson. Henry?
Yes, ma'am. They're on, and we're ready to go. You are?
Perfect.
I would be remiss if I didn't hijack things for a second. Dr. Donaldson's thunder, but this is an important day. I'll let Dr. Donaldson speak to it. 6 years worth of history. Henry and Randy Davis, and of course the chief of police was there. Very different than things were 60 years ago. For a similar moment, dedication on Main and Gervais today. I'll let Dr. Donaldson speak to it, but it's an important day in the history of civil rights. Not just for Columbia, not just for South Carolina, but for the entire United States of America. And as goes America, so goes the world. But a fantastic day. And I'll yield the floor back to Assistant City Manager Simons and Dr. Donaldson. And Lee.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wilson, and for your opening comments. Thank you, Mayor Benjamin and our City Council, for providing us with an opportunity to present our presentation for the Public Art Project. We started this process about 6 months ago, of course, at you all's direction, and our focus and theme for this project was to create artistic murals that depict African-American history, heritage, and culture. And the desire was to identify specific locations within each councilperson's district for this work to be accomplished. Several locations, of course, were identified, and we narrowed those locations down to 4 city-owned facilities. With these locations, of course, our goal was to tell a story about specific African Americans that were connected historically to those communities. Our goal actually was to launch this project during Black History Month in an effort to celebrate African American lives and history. And we missed that mark by a few days, of course, but this is just an extension of that celebration. So this project is being facilitated and funded through the Parks and Recreation Foundation. And I just would like to thank them for their continuous support of our efforts. We also partnered with Dr. Bobby Donaldson. Dr. Donaldson, of course, is the director of the Center for Civil Rights History and Research for the University of South Carolina, and has worked as a professor there for over 20 years. He also serves as the lead scholar for Columbia SC63, Our Story Matters, which is a history initiative that chronicles the struggle for civil rights and social justice in Columbia. So we have aligned this project with some amazing work that's already been done through Columbia SC63. We've also partnered with Lee Snellgrove, who is the executive director of One Columbia for Arts and Culture, and Lee is also a member of the Parks and Recreation Foundation, which is helping us facilitate this project. So he is working in that capacity. One Columbia is currently the gatekeeper, of course, to help this project. And he also facilitates arts and culture throughout the city of Columbia. Over 75% of this work is being done by local artists, and Lee Snellgrove will provide those details here in just a minute. First, Dr. Bobby Donaldson will take us through the themes by location and speak to specific historical impacts that this has on our communities. And Lee Snellgrove will follow that to speak to the process, the artists, and the specific renderings that will be installed. We're very excited about this work, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Donaldson to start us off with his portion of the presentation. Dr. Donaldson?
Would you touch on today some too, please, Dr. Donaldson? And Henry, don't worry, Black History Month is every month of the year. We didn't miss anything.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Simons and Mayor Benjamin. I had the opportunity on this past Sunday to speak for Black History Month at Mayor Benjamin's home church, St. John Baptist, in the Booker Washington Heights community. And my message, Mr. Simons, was that we were just beginning, even though it was the end of the month, we were just beginning. And so this project is actually in good time. As a founding member of Columbia SC 63, which has been supported and strongly championed by this council and previous councils, and also as a founding member of One Columbia for Arts and History. This is an extraordinary day for us as we think about ongoing ways to celebrate and to chronicle some vibrant history in the city of Columbia, and how we can use structures within city properties that can be used as a classroom and a visual textbook about the history of largely unknown moments and unknown individuals in our community. And Columbia 63 started in 2012. And so when I first heard about the initiative for the public art work in the city, I was very excited about being involved. As many of you know, there are a series of wayside signs down Main Street that chronicled this history in the city of Columbia. And Lee, if you would go to the next slide. So this photograph here is from September of 1963. These are a group of young people who are championing the end of desegregation in downtown Columbia. But if you look closely, it's more than just a group. There are multiple groups. There are some who are asking for freedom now, but there are others in the background who are championing a maintenance of the status quo, who argue that segregation is indeed in the best interest of Columbia and indeed in the best interest of the nation. So Columbia is a turning point where you see a real clash of visions about where do we go from here. And part of what we hope will be achieved is to underscore critical moments and individuals who are part of the transition, or what I call the reconstruction of our city and our communities. If you go to the next slide. So Columbia 63, in addition to the wayside signs and the public engagement and public activities, very much believes that another way to reach our citizens and to reach audiences around the country is through art as a lens into history. And so over the years, throughout the work we've done since 2012, we have commissioned artists to do a series of installations or interpretations. What you'll see on the screen here is an artistic rendering of key moments in civil rights demonstrations in downtown Columbia that was on display at the TAPS Art Center on Main Street. In the next slide. So today, we announced a couple of new initiatives that we're very excited about. Today, we announced a historical marker that stands on the corner of Gervais and Main Streets that marks the 60th anniversary of a key civil rights event in this nation that occurred 60 years ago today, when over 200 students gathered in downtown Columbia to protest segregation on the grounds of the State House. They were arrested for a breach of peace. Their arrest moves its way from the local courts in Columbia to the United States Supreme Court. And in February of 1963, the US Supreme Court overturns the conviction of young people in a case called Edwards versus South Carolina. Well, today, in front of the State House, we had several of those individuals who were part of that transformative legal victory in 1963, including James Edwards, who is now 81 years old. They're unveiling a marker with his family. We also had present a woman named Leola Robinson Simpson, who is a member of the General Assembly of South Carolina. 60 years ago, he was a 16-year-old leader of the state NAACP youth division. So it's extraordinary irony to see someone who was arrested on the grounds of the State House now governing within that building. Also present today was the family of a man named Reverend David Carter. Reverend Carter was the organizer of this demonstration. He was a student at Benedict College. And during the course of the demonstration, Reverend Carter said, "Let your conscience be your guide." And so today, I'm not sure how the mayor thinks about it, it was very moving to me to have the grandchildren of Reverend Carter, ages 2 to 6, unveiling a new monument that stands on the grounds, on the corner of Maine and Gervais that is entitled We Shall Not Be Moved. In addition, we have work with Lee Snell Grove and One Columbia, a new public art installation that we have unveiled officially today that's outside the doors of the Nickelodeon Theater, 1607 Main Street. 60 years ago, 1607 Main Street was a segregated movie theater. Today, it is a destination for all citizens. So there you'll see a bronze sculpture by Jerome Meadows, one of the leading artists in the country, entitled Speaking Truth to Power. In that installation, you will see quotes from some very well-known civil rights figures in Columbia, such as Majeska Monteith Simpkins, and some lesser-known figures, such as the Reverend David Carter. So part of what guides and inspires this collaboration is that it builds upon some ongoing work in the city and will be a springboard, I believe, for some other important initiatives. Next slide, please. So this is the wayside that accompanies that marker, that installation on Main. In the next slide. So when we were presented a series of sites for consideration by the city, I was particularly excited about this particular site, 1401 Main, in the heart of Councilman McDowell's district. We know it as a modern office tower that is now within the city portfolio. But many people of a certain age know this corner of Main and Washington as the beginnings of the African American Business District. So the next slide. So the footprint of part of 1401 Main is here. It is the beginnings of what was called, for some, Black Wall Street, or the Black Downtown District. And so for a proposal, we strongly considered that the wall of the 1401 Main Street building, now within the city's portfolio, may serve as a canvas by which citizens may now know a deeper and richer history of what was once in that area, including African-American businesses, African-American theaters, African-American physicians, lawyers, doctors, cleaners, restaurants, nightclubs, all part of a thriving district that is no longer standing, with exception of maybe one or two buildings. So again, it will be an opportunity to learn more about a history that has been largely removed from a physical presence in that area. So the next slide. Here is a simple brick wall in Hyatt Park in Councilman Davis's district. As I thought more about this wall and that community, we were led to some thoughts about other individuals who may have a story to tell that is not widely known. So in this next slide, you will see some of those individuals. We thought that the Hyatt Park site might be a place to discuss the pursuit of citizenship in Columbia and in South Carolina. Among the individuals who will be highlighted in this new public art installation include a woman named Septima Poinsett Clark, who for nearly 20 years taught in the public schools of Columbia. She taught at the old Saxon School, where the Strom Thurmond Wellness Center is now. She taught at the Howard School, which is now where the old Bell South building is. And she once taught at Booker T. Washington High School on the campus of the University of South Carolina. After Septima Clark was dismissed from her job as a teacher, she assumed greater civil rights work and developed what was called citizenship schools, where she trained people about how to prepare to exercise their right to vote. She is joined in that effort by a gentleman who deserves much more attention, whose name was Deacon Benjamin J. Mack, who was a resident of the Ridgewood community in the Hyatt Park area, who was also a very active leader in the SCLC under Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And finally, another individual for consideration is a man named Listervelt Middleton, a pioneering journalist in ETV, but who also had a series of public television programs called For the People. where early on he championed the connection between citizenship and understanding a history largely removed from textbooks. So that is the proposal for the Hyatt Park area. The next site. Simple Wall Woodland Park off of Garners Ferry Road in Councilman, whose district is that? Henry?
That's Councilman Rickman's district.
Councilman Rickman, of course, because we've talked about it. So Councilman Rickman, this is in your district, Simple Wall. When I thought more about where Woodlands Park is located, that it is a path between Lower Richland and Columbia, I thought it might be an appropriate venue, an appropriate campus to bring more attention to, the next slide, this woman, a young woman named Sarah Mae Fleming Brown, who only weeks after the famous Brown v. Board of Education case ruled by the Supreme Court, on June 22nd, this 20-year-old woman from Eastover took a seat on the first available seat on a city bus in Columbia. She knew that that seat was reserved for white passengers. She knew she was violating the segregation laws of our city, but she sat down anyway. And in sitting down, Sarah Mae Fleming was attacked by a bus driver and ultimately filed a lawsuit against the owners of the bus company, SCE&G. In the case of Fleming versus SCE&G becomes a path-breaking case that sets the stage for the legal rulings related to Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama, 17 months later. Recently, we've uncovered an interview of Judge Matthew J. Perry, who was Sarah Mae Fleming's lawyer. And he said he deeply regretted that this woman on the screen never got the attention she was due, given how important her legal victory was. Sarah Mae Fleming, a native of Eastover, once worked in a household in the Woodland Park, Garners Ferry district in Hampton Hills, actually, where she worked. And so we thought it might be an appropriate venue in that crossroads between Columbia and Eastover to pay tribute to this pioneering civil rights hero, Sarah Mae Fleming Brown. Next slide.
Dr. Donaldson,
Yes.
I thought it'd be great if you could just add to that, because I think the picture itself was discovered from a collection from Birmingham and had been on the cover of a national magazine, and really she was the pioneer for Rosa Parks' case.
Correct.
And huge historical value for our community. But the background of how we discovered, I think, is also a great part of the story.
So Columbia 63 was initially conceived as a partnership with several southern cities, including Birmingham, Montgomery, and Selma, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, and Washington, D.C. And we agreed that we would do a traveling exhibit that would go from each of these cities in 2013 and 14. And as a part of that agreement, we got agreement from Time and Life magazine that they would provide images from their collections to be used for the exhibit. And when Sam Johnson, who was working with us on that project, went to Birmingham, he came back and told me that we were not included in that part of the exhibit. And I said, well, why not? The curator said, Councilman Rickman, there were no images from Columbia in Time and Life magazine. And not knowing what the issue was, I said, surely that can't be true. And so we literally thumbed through Life magazine and came across this image that I did not know existed of Sarah Mae Fleming standing in front of, you can't see it, the Trentham Road bus in 1954. And so I quickly said, we found an image. We want to be added to the exhibit. And we were. And since that point, Sarah Mae Fleming's family had no idea this photograph existed. They had never discussed it before. And so this has been a great, great contribution, I believe, of Columbia 63, and seemingly quite fitting, Councilman Rickman, that this image become the inspiration for an artistic rendering. So thank you for reminding me of that important contribution. Okay, next slide. So here we have a wall in Valencia Park, in Rosewood and Councilman Brennan's district. It is a plain wall. we thought more about the history of the Rosewood community, and it came to me about another iconic photograph that many from Columbia may not know of its existence. So the next slide. This photograph appeared in the New York Times in September of 1964. It marked the legal integration of public schools in Columbia. And there were several schools who were part of that first wave of integration, including Rosewood Elementary. Those gates are still standing and quite visible on Rosewood Drive. And so we thought that an appropriate theme for the Valencia Park site would be the pursuit of education, drawing attention to the young men and women who were the brave foot soldiers in integrating the schools of Columbia in 1964. Okay. Lee, I think that's all the slides, or is there one more? And then one more? So part of what we are hopeful and why we're excited about this initiative is that, of course, these are venues in the districts of councilmen and councilwomen. But we also know that our youngest citizens may not be getting this history in their textbooks or in their classrooms. And therefore, the Public Art Initiative provides a unique opportunity to turn nearly every corner of our city into a classroom. And so we're hopeful that when someone goes to Valencia Park or Woodland Park, or someone goes to Hyatt Park, or they take the walking tour down Columbia 63 on Main, they can look up and see just one more example of the extraordinary history of our community. All right, thank you. So I'll turn to my colleague, Lee Snellgrove, who will explain how you take all these ideas of a historian and make them into art. So Lee.
Thank you, Council and Mr. Mayor, for having me today. I am a member of the board of the Parks Foundation, and in that role was asked to help with this project, certainly due to the experience I have with One Columbia and our public art projects there. So we have worked with Dr. Donaldson and Mr. Simons throughout this project to conduct the process for artist selection and to identify strong proposals of concepts for each location that really speak to all the story that you just heard from Dr. Donaldson. So we did this, we obviously had the locations to go off of and the background of each location and the theme we were hoping to identify. Through the help of One Columbia, we identified artists that we would shortlist in a similar way to what we do as required by the city for public art projects that happen on city property. So we identified a short list from our ever-growing list of qualified artists. We then selected some that, pinpointed ones that would be right for each project that had certain expertise or had certain skill sets or we felt would be able to accomplish projects in each of these areas. We then reached out to them, had them submit a proposal to us with their concept. They provided those and were given a proposal stipend to compensate them for their time in creating the proposals. And then those proposals were looked at by council and the stakeholders involved, and 4 were selected. So I'm here to show you what we have in store for you in each of these locations. So just as a reminder, this is the wall at 1401 Main Street that we plan to install the mural on. This is the photograph that was the central inspiration given to the artists that responded to us in this location. And this is the image that we were provided by an artist named Aja Charles, who's gotten quite some notoriety lately for much of her other work in the area and some commissioned work she's done on canvases. So you'll see here she's taken that storefront. One thing of note, each of these renderings are renderings created to respond to a proposal. Some adjustments will obviously be made when artists work on the wall. Those will be minimal, some perspective changes, not generally much content changes. But here, Ms. Charles has taken that storefront photo, highlighted some of the individual business names that were in that photo, and really given a sense of life and vibrancy to what would have been a facade along the Black Business District. So she's shown lots of figures walking, the energy of the street along with that initial storefront. And she does anticipate taking the entire wall space that's available there on that building, which will make it very prominent and very iconic, and certainly really draw lots of attention to that area of the downtown corridor. And Ms. Charles, just of note, is a resident of Columbia currently, and has, I believe has done work throughout the Southeast, but primarily resides here. So for the Hyatt Park location, this is the wall that Dr. Donaldson showed you, and he showed you these images of these three important figures to that area and the pursuit of citizenship. And we have received this proposal from Charmaine Minifield, who is a resident of Atlanta and is currently on a residency in Gambia. She has a team of artists that she works with, so she provided us this proposal. One of those members of her team, Ariel Flowers, is actually a resident of Columbia. Ms. Mayfield has done work previously for us. In fact, in Hyatt Park, she completed a mural as part of the Indie Grits event around the theme of two cities when they focused on the divide between North Columbia and downtown. She completed a mural there already and has worked closely with that neighborhood through that process. So she was very aware of Hyatt Park and even this building long before we even asked her to submit a proposal. So she's given us this showcasing sort of African cloth patterns in the background, and then we'll paint, while these are photo renderings over top of that painting, she'll actually have a portrait artist complete portraits in a black and white color palette on over that very colorful background to recognize these figures of the Hyatt Park community and Columbia. And next is Woodland Park, and the wall is on the building there in the park. And just a reminder of the photo of Ms. Sarah Mae Fleming. And we received this proposal from a couple who is an artist team that travel around the Southeast, and they completed work. I met them when they completed work in Lake City for Artfield's annual celebration of arts there. They are called Hand in Hand Creative, and they provided this rendering, a sort of impressionistic look at that same photo, showing Ms. Fleming in front of the bus. The proposed text on the right, in this case, is an example. That is just a sample of some text of what it might look like, but they plan to work with Dr. Donaldson to identify an appropriate direct quote from Ms. Fleming about her experience that might go in that space. If that is available to them to do so. And then our last location, Valencia Park, in the Rosewood area, and the photograph that is the inspiration for this location. And then here is the rendering concept by an artist named McClellan Douglas, who is a Rosewood resident and works throughout the country installing murals and is quite an accomplished public artist. He has given us this sort of expression of that photograph, sticking very closely to what is there, but also lending itself, I think, to showcase the hope that kind of came out of the challenges of that day for those students. And so that are the four concepts we've identified and received from the artists, and that will involve on those. One point I wanted to make is that, with many of our public art projects, all the artists will be using high quality materials for these installations, high quality paints. They're all experienced public artists and are very aware of the conditions that their pieces will be in. So they will ensure that these pieces are installed in a quality manner and will need minimal maintenance. Also, they will provide us some details about what their expected maintenance requirements will be. Just a general wash is generally the case. And they'll even provide us some information on whether if we ever have to make a touch up or do any repairs to the murals, then we'll have available information to match colors or connect with them if the artists are needed to make these repairs. But we can expect at least a 10-year lifespan on all of these projects, I believe, based on our experience with other murals similar that we've done in Columbia. At least 10 years, likelihood very longer. But that is what we can expect. So overall, I think these projects will be quite successful, long lasting, and really do justice to each of these photographs and all the stories that you've heard from Dr. Donaldson today.
And Lee and Dr. Donaldson, let me just add this comment. One of the main reasons why we decided to conduct or show these images outside on the exterior of the building, because oftentimes you got citizens that will never enter some of these facilities. And if you put something on the inside versus the outside, that takes away our ability to maximize who will see the actual images. So our goal was to put these images on the exterior to maximize our visibility. And as Dr. Donaldson so eloquently spoke about an education piece as well. So I wanted to add that to your comments, Lee. So with saying that, we'll take any questions or comments from council.
Henry.
Henry. Ms. Ed?
Yes. Henry, will there be, in addition to the mural, will there be a plaque associated with the mural?
Yes, sir. I'll let Dr. Donaldson speak to that question.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Councilman McDowell, that's correct. So each site will be accompanied by what we describe as wayside signs. Okay. And those wayside signs will give some historical context to what a viewer is seeing. In addition, when available, it can also point to some other resources such as websites, oral interviews, some video footage we may have of downtown Columbia. And so there will be some additional information that will explain what you're seeing, but also providing you some other pathways to learning more about what you're seeing on those sites.
That's sort of similar to what we already got downtown, the plaques that are there.
Right. So they'll be designed and will look very similar to what you see in the Main Street walking tour.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Other questions for Henry, Lee, or Bobby? These are gorgeous, I might add, y'all. I mean, they just obviously I know that in full life and to scale, they'll be that much more amazing. And just reiterating Reverend McDowell's question that the educational component obviously is probably the most important piece of the puzzle. And I think elevating the fact that in each of these panels, you see people who are seemingly ordinary and all accomplished extraordinary things, which I believe helps speak to children on our street or just folks who are going about their daily lives, just trying to get to work, as Mrs. Fleming Brown was one day, and can literally shape the course of history by decisions that they make when approached with challenging situations. This is what people need to see. And this is, when we decided as a council that this was the approach that we wanted to take for such a time as this, we determined that we would take an approach that was edifying, that was unifying, that would bring people together, that would elevate our arts community, but really speak to the rich history of not only the African seed and American sun, but to the spirit of this city that we all believe, as we strive to be more perfect, this city was birthed in the spirit of inclusion, edified in our flag now, and all that we try and say and do. And I'm excited about this, really excited and thankful to your collective leadership, and really thankful to council for supporting not only this step in the journey, but when we conceived of our participation in Columbia SC 63 as Dr. Donaldson articulated back then. We were kind of throwing elbows for Columbia, just trying to get a seat at the table because so often we were not recognized. And now I don't think that many folks anywhere can speak of where we are and in this time and not speak of the contributions of Columbia. And I dare say I go even a couple of years before we stepped up in 2012 and go back to the organization and the founding of One Columbia and the investment that's led to this wonderful organization that you lead, Lee. I know obviously you're here in your capacity as the Parks and Rec Foundation board, but we got a lot of good things going on, and you take and you wrap it up with some amazing public administrators like Henry and others, and we this is what the doctor ordered, Teresa. All right, so let's keep pressing. I really want to again thank council for your leadership. We are stronger when we are together. Mr. Davis.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow your eloquent description of what has brought us to this point. But I really have some sentiments about all of this because I'm really looking forward to the rendering on the Washington Street side because I'd mentioned before that that picture there, that window where you see the law office, that was where I met first met Judge Finney, and that day I was making my rounds with lawyer John Hopper, who was the lead attorney for the NAACP when we were fighting for the change in the form of government in Columbia, which now reflects the 421 plan. And it's all about really understanding and taking advantage of the people you meet. Because you never know what their background is. You never know what their contributions may have been or will be to our daily lives. And so I applaud the city for doing that. And my experience, I think, is varied because of all those people I've met, and we did some marching and all that myself. But I think it says a lot about the city of Columbia, and hopefully we can always say it says a lot about the leadership that just thought about doing the right thing. But the main thing about it is you never forget impacts on your personal life. And sometimes the things we remember are the things that help us commit to adding to the quality of life of everybody else. So I think this is a good project, and hopefully we'll cherish it, but at the same time, we'll maintain it as we move along.
Thank you. No, we must. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Sam. And Bobby, again, we won't wax poetic too much longer, but I know just as so many of these folks, I know people that the specific impact on Mr. Davis and others, but it still amazes me as I get around the country and speak to pretty well-educated folks who don't know September Poinsett Clark, who don't know her impact on shaping the movement. The personal impact that Lista Belt Middleton had on me and so many other students at the University of South Carolina. When I told his son Bakari about this effort, I think he was significantly moved, and I'll leave it there. My very first job, as I thought about becoming a lawyer, and the year before I started law school, I worked in the law office of John Roy Harper, worked with him and Vernon Burton on reapportionment and redistricting. Didn't know what I was doing, but I was set to learn. And these giants really laid the foundation for all of us in so many different ways. And taking a moment to elevate those names that folks may not know, and again, to connect the dots for each and every one of us to realize that God has great things in store for us. And if in fact we step up and meet the moment. This is a very small way of us meeting our moment. So again, thank you all for your amazing leadership here. Madam City Manager, does this require action?
No, sir. We are prepared to keep moving it forward and honored and excited to do so.
Ms. Wilson, I know we've talked about this before, but just for the public watching, can you give everybody an expectation on the time frame for this?
Sure, I will let Henry do that if that's okay.
Absolutely, and I'll also mention this as well, Mr. Vine. Mr. Vine made a suggestion that we should capture the process by way of video. So I've engaged our public relations department, and they're going to help us to capture the process as we go through. So Mr. Vine, that will occur. And I want to thank Lisa Utsi and her team for committing to do so. We're looking at between the renderings, 6 to 8 week process. Some of them may take less time than that, but we want to give ourselves some flexibility. So at max, it'll be a 60-week process from start to finish.
Thank you.
Exciting times ahead. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Donaldson. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Henry, very much.
Good job.
We are ready for the consent agenda items 5 through 13, Mayor Benjamin.
Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If anyone has a chance to review the agenda, see continued investment, water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure, that would be encouraging.
Mr. Mayor, quick question, sir.
Please, Will.
Clint and Mr. Jacob, wanted to talk to you real quick about the what is that, sewer upgrades, Gills Creek? What is the, I guess the summary of that is that relief for the Woodlands, Old Woodlands, Hamptons neighborhoods, and then the South Beltline. What is the time frame for design and then follow through construction on that?
Councilman, Councilman, this is Clint. I'll get you a detailed answer, but the design is probably about a 12-month duration, and then construction is 12 to 18 months. I'd say beyond that. We'll try to expedite that as much as possible. I'll get you the detailed project schedule and send it to you by email.
And would you say it's pretty significant relief to those areas of the city?
Yes, sir. It is, and there'll be continued improvements to come. But yes, sir.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. We'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you.
Welcome.
City Manager.
Yes, sir. Ordinance is first reading. Ordinance number 2021-013, authorizing the city manager to execute a license agreement with the New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for use of property at our Lower Richland Tank site.
Is there a motion?
So move.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickaman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you, ma'am.
Resolutions, item 15, resolution number 2021-011, adopting the bylaws of the Climate Protection Action Committee. They were last revised on February the 16th of 2021. And I think council was aware of these revisions as came out of committee and discussed at our last meeting.
So moved.
Right.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, with the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye, thank you.
Ms. Wilson, before we go on, now that we've approved that, I do have someone I would like, now that we're expanding the board as well, I have someone I'd like to appoint, so if we can get Ms. Jenkins to connect with me, I'll put her in touch with that citizen, and if we can move forward with getting some other appointments to the CPAC so that they can go forward aggressively on the work they have planned for 2021, that'd be great.
Yes, ma'am, will do. If any of you have any additional suggestions, if you could share those with Ashley Jenkins. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 16 is resolution number R 2021-014, authorizing the city manager to execute a sublease agreement between the City of Columbia and KW Associates LLC, the KW Beverage site for 920 A and B Hemlock Road. And this will be a new facility that our Columbia Police Department will utilize for space.
Is there a motion? A second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
You on mute, Sam.
Aye. Sorry.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
One additional matter, item 17, is council is asked to approve the FY 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, the JAG application for equipment enhancements in the Special Services Bureau of the Columbia Police Department in the amount of $72,941.
So move.
Second. In discussion, we'll move the previous question. The clerk call the roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Do we have any referrals or reports from committees? Mr. Rickman.
Yeah, I would like to go ahead and establish, if we could, the committee on the tax study. We had committed to pull partners together, both from the school district, the county, ourselves, and maybe somebody from the chamber is working together to really dig into the data and work together on how we could formulate a plan to benefit the community and reducing our tax structure for competitiveness. So I'd like us to go ahead and establish that committee and start working with our sister agencies here in Columbia on the fact-finding side and coming up with recommendations to present back to the different bodies.
Is there a second? No effect?
I'll second.
All right. Are we, Mr. Davis, you had some comment?
Well, I'm just interested in the appointments and the process for that. Is there any rolling thoughts on that, Daniel?
I mean, the first thought would be is that you'd get two folks from each of the entities, the school district, the city, and the county, and then maybe a representative from the chamber who'd represent folks. And then maybe we could look at some other groups. I don't know if we tap the president, neighborhood council of neighborhood associations. You don't want to get it too big because it needs to be a working group. So, I think we should talk about who all be part of that, but I think we need to make it manageable so that we can meet on a regular basis and continue to move forward.
Yeah.
Mr. McDowell, I'm sorry, please, what's your thought, Mr. Davis, please?
I'm just saying, I don't have a problem with that. I agree with that. But I think, the end product would, the expectation would be is that it's something that John Q. Public can understand. And so maybe at a minimum, one citizen that could kind of articulate, the expectation, the reason we're doing it, to the also help to convey that to the public at large. The taxation, as we're trying to understand it and get some relief from, does impact basically everybody in the city. Now, I'm not saying it has to be 5, 10 citizens, but maybe 1 or 2. That would be my suggestion, but I'll leave that up to the group.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. McDowell and Mr. Duval.
Well, I want to just piggyback on what Daniel said a few minutes ago. I think it would be important and very essential that we roll out, if we're going to roll out this committee, to have some I don't want to say criteria, but at least have some vetting done so that it becomes an inclusive committee that's going to reach every tenant of our city. Whether it's, you don't want it to be too large, nor do you want it to be too small. It has to be a committee that's going to reach out and hear and understand what this whole effort and emphasis is about. So I appreciate that. So I think we need to do that, really.
Mr. Duval and Ms. Devine.
Mayor, you will, I'm sure, remember the 2 years that you and I spent on a committee that was essentially the same makeup that Daniel just referred to. The issues that were pointed out in the tax study are very complicated issues. Many of those issues cannot be settled by the group sitting around a county with the county and the school district and the city in Richland County. It's going to have to be settled at the legislative level. And I fear that starting up this study at the same time we're starting up an election season that's going to elect 4 new members of this council is the wrong time to get into this type of study. If we want to do something positively, I think we could get a small working group of the people that are experts in municipal government, county government, school government, and do what the Chamber of Commerce did several years back, and kind of lay out where the problems are before you get a public-facing committee delving into these sensitive subjects during a political campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Duval. Ms. Devine, and then we'll come back to Mr. Davis.
So I actually was going to say something similar to Mr. Duval. So thank you, Howard, for that. I was just going to say 2 things. Number one, so I do think this is something that needs to be discussed. I've actually personally met with the superintendents of both 1 and 2 and their finance teams. And I've met with our county auditor, Mr. Brawley, and independently, all 3 groups pointed out several things that they felt needed deeper study. And so I think a working group probably would be best as someone who, is in campaign mode. And, Mr. Rickman and I have talked, and we are working together on lots of things together in our current capacity as a council member. So I'm not alluding to he or I would politicize any of this, but I do think the reality of we've all been on council during campaign seasons where things can turn not for solutions, but more by outside folks made more political. So I would suggest if we could do a working group and maybe among ourselves kind of come up with some of the ideas and issues that we think need further study. And through our staff, maybe they can pull together some more information. I like Howard's idea of administrative type folks in all 3 bodies. Because what I will say is the superintendents had some really great information, but their finance teams were really the ones who were able to pull out some areas that they felt were concerned. And to be honest, a lot of the concern from them and from what Auditor Brawley said is more on the state level. especially as it relates to our millage and the value of our millage versus other areas of this state. So I think if we jump out too far, some of those things are going to be missed. And so I would suggest that maybe we could do a working group that would give some information, and then we can come up with some questions. And then from that, we can kind of determine who else needs to be at the table.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You had another comment?
Yeah, going back to my roots, I don't think, I think this issue and this problem has been before us for a long time. And no matter how we plan our strategy, my position is that we've got to have somebody around that table in that initial group in terms of setting the guidelines and mapping out the strategy that's not politically connected. And that would be a citizen. Doesn't have to be high profile, doesn't have to be a sleeping dog, but that person needs to be able to be at that table so that the potential policymakers are going to have some indication or some perspective of where the real taxpayers are going to come from. I just think we ought to do that. We've been kicking this can for a long time, and it won't hurt to put somebody else in there.
Sam, are you?
I'm sorry. I just think that's the way to go. It's good government from our standpoint.
Mr. Ed?
So your point, Sam, is that instead of what you're saying is going forward with it.
I think we could. I'm hoping we could figure out a way to get this thing off the ground, which would indicate our true intentions of coming up with the right answers or the right strategy to solve the problem.
Well, I guess I feel probably the same way. The question that other concern that runs through my mind, I mean, whatever the issues are, I mean, 2 years ago, we talked about this issue. It just happens to be an election year. I think it would seem to me that to move forward with this, whether in a small way, to move forward with it, to at least start that conversation. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, we talked about the same thing. Remember, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Of course, the church became an issue. And it just fell off to the wayside. Now we're in a political year, and we want to raise that. I think in some kind of way, we need to raise that issue, at least in a small, minute way, and at least start following through with this. There are several issues we sort of dropped the ball on, and that's one of those issues we dropped the ball, and we need to move forward with this thing.
Let me, has everyone had their say? I think everyone's had their say. I apologize, I'm struggling with the contact lens here.
Mr. Rickman's hand is raised.
Okay. Please, Daniel.
I was just going to say, look, I think all the suggestions people made are great. And, you know, a lot of us spent a lot of time. This isn't the same discussion we had 2 years ago because we have a real report this brought forth to us that is factual and real data. And I think it's imperative that we formulate some type of committee. You know, if it's third-party administrators, if it's different consultants to sit down and do it. But I think we first need to engage our county and state and obviously, you know, the school district in the conversation as well. And so I do think it's important that we move this forward. This has been something before election season and we all knew it. So let's don't use election season to slow anything down because the reality is this is about Columbia.
Well, you know, I'm sorry.
This isn't gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take us a while to do all this. So I'm open to whatever. I just don't want it to sit on a shelf. We got enough.
And Daniel, since help me exactly understand what it is. I think we got to be very clear about what the objective is here. Because what's the objective here? The objective is to come up with another list of recommendations in addition to Rebecca's recommendations. Is it to encourage the school districts to combine to reduce their millage? Is it to ask our delegation what we've been asking them for the last several years? In order for us to be, we got to be bold about articulating exactly what our objectives are. We're going to have to inspire action from others because we've acted. This council over the last several years has cut millage by 12 mills. We've sacrificed in the interest of the whole. So I guess we have to be very clear about what it is we're asking for. Otherwise, we're just going to spend more time, money, and just admiring the problem. What exactly is the goal here?
Well, I think first of all, we
no,
haven't had a conversation with everybody to really lay out, hey, this is the findings of the study that we did, because it shows that every entity has a piece and a role in it. Good, bad, and different. You can look at it from 16 different ways. The reality is the data shows that we all have a responsibility to do it and to be competitive. To build up, to give the soil conditions to allow investment and everything bit. So I think that's step one. Step two, it is going to be bold. But what is that? What is the best path for that? We have to include our partners in that. So I couldn't tell you that the best path is consolidation because I don't know that.
I'm watching, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, we got to figure out where we're going. Or else we're going to waste a whole lot more time and just allow a whole lot of folks who just like to beat up on the city, quite frankly, through many of them who just like to beat up on the city. I will tell you, this city, under the leadership of this council, all of us, and previous council, under the leadership of Teresa Wilson and Steve Gant before her, and Jeff Palin, and others, and Jan and Missy Kaufman, and our incredible city manager, assistant city managers, and staff. We've run an incredibly fiscally responsible shop. We've not increased millage, we've decreased millage. We've finished most of the last several years, 8-11, with a budget surplus. You guys remember 11 years ago, we were furloughing police officers. We were talking about shutting down fire departments. We have not only reversed that trend, but we've invested heavily in solid policing, increased our law enforcement budget and 21st century policing budget by upwards of 70, 80%. We've done what we're supposed to do. Now, I do believe, and I've been very clear about our role in terms of regionalism and intergovernmental leadership, we should help lead the region and push others. But we have been constantly pushing those buttons. We run into little things called the law here and there, and it's limited us in some of the different ideas that many of you have come up with over the years as to how we lever the growth of nonprofits or limit the growth of nonprofits. We've used some tools like the multi-county industrial park and special source revenue credit to turn what would have been larger growth by the university into tax producing property to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. You have those who say that the Midlands or Columbia is not competitive. Columbia, Richland County had the largest economic development project in the state last year. Number one, not number two, not number three, number one by far with the Mark Antony project. We have projects going up on Assembly Street, one with another one not far behind it, projects going up on North Main Street, Bull Street, moving forward aggressively, contrary to what others might. Let me
here. I thought this was about we
no. Let me finish what I'm saying. we've got to make sure that we're actually putting together a committee. And I'm fine with it. I'll support the motion to form a committee, but it's got to be a committee that actually commits to doing something, not just doing something and advocating. Because Rebecca's report, and you guys, I was very clear and transparent. Dr. Gulakson makes some specific recommendations. Most of them, actually, the biggest ones, require a massive change in state law, massive changes in state law. Repeal of Act 388 that would increase property taxes for every single citizen in Columbia. Are we willing to say that that's our position and move forward?
That wasn't the only one. That's just.
No, I'm not done, Daniel. I'm not done, Daniel. But it will. But that's a fact. Act 388 will do so. Whether or not we think it's a good idea, is that something we're willing to advocate for? We recognize the systemic challenges that depress the mill. Dr. Gulakson laid out some of those issues quite clearly. And I'm laying this out because we're gonna move forward with establishing this commission, but it needs to be important that we lay out to people who want to work on a committee that we must be truly solutions oriented and solutions oriented for the people, working people of this city, small businesses of this city. That's got to be focused. I'm gonna second your motion. I'm going to second your motion, but we've got to make sure that we've got to have clear, targeted, measurable, time-bound results that help us actually get to where we want to get to. I'll just be frank with you. I'm not going to stand by for the next 8, 9, 10 months and just watch people beat up on the city. And some of them who will choose to be completely and intellectually dishonest at the arguments they make. This city, we've busted our butts to make sure that we create a competitive environment here. We're seeing the fruits of those labors. And we're going to make sure that everyone who wants to step up and speak their piece, that they're working towards a constructive, ambitious goal at the end of the day to make sure that everyone moves forward together and that we don't tear each other down. We've been there before, and we're not going to go back there. I'm not saying you, Daniel, but we're not going to go back there. I second your.
I'm a little confused at why. I mean, first of all, I'm suggesting to putting a committee together that involved us. Howard made a suggestion that maybe that politically that doesn't do well, but it was supposed to be us working and taking the data and coming up with solutions. And so I guess I'm a little confused because everybody that I've heard from is thanking us for taking that.
Yeah, no, folks, I got text messages from the chamber and others today too. We've got to make sure that we have city folks, that we have citizens who support public education, that we have citizens who are just regular, as I think someone said, forget the regular working folks. We need small businesses represented here. We need state legislators available and willing to serve, who are actually going to take these ideas back to the State House and put them into action. Otherwise, we're going to be wasting our time running around in circles and providing talking points for everybody who wants to take shots at the city. My number one job is to protect the integrity and reputation of this city. And I'm going to fight for that till the day I leave on December 31st. It's so important that as we construct this, that it's constructed with the spirit and a true working group that helps us get there. Teresa and her team have been busting their butts. Jeff, I'm not sure if Jeff has any money left in his wallet. So I mean, I'm just saying, let's just make sure that I don't know if that's going to be a committee of the whole. I'm not sure if it's going to be you and Tamika and maybe one other member of council representing us. But I just want to make sure when you guys go out there, we fight like hell for this city and the city's reputation. We fight like hell for the competitiveness in the Midlands region. I mean, that's got to be the goal at the end of the day. So I feel strong about it.
But I've been saying it since day one that I pushed this for a reason. Is because we need this to be competitive. We need small businesses who are paying 6%. That's who this is for. We need to stop this. I don't understand. I'm a little confused by the message. But the reality is I haven't spent all this time and all this for no reason. The reason I want to fix this is because we've been talking about it for a decade, maybe longer.
Talking about what?
Need to fix it.
Talking about
what you gonna fix?
We haven't been talking. We've been voting. We've been voting to reduce taxes every single year. We've been voting to put about $750 million in infrastructure, Daniel. We haven't been talking. We've been acting. This council,
at the same time,
everybody else, we've been acting.
Being the same way. I mean, we have a role of responsibility and we've been doing it, but it's both.
We've acted.
Can I suggest something? If maybe
we've been acting.
If maybe
no, Tamika, 1 second. I just want to make sure we set the tone, y'all. We will not go into this process with anyone beating up on the city of Columbia. We've done what we're supposed to do, and we'll continue to lead. But that's so important to me, and I'm going to hold the line there as we go forward. I'm just being clear. As we go forward, we've done our share, and we're going to make sure that we push others to do theirs as well. But I will work to protect the integrity of the city. Tamika, and then Mr. Davis.
Well, I was just going to suggest that maybe Councilman Rickerman, Councilman Duvall, and I can talk about a process, because I think that's what, to your point, Mr. Mayor, I think it's important who this working group is to make sure they are solution oriented and that they don't have any agendas bringing to the table other than to solve the problem collectively. So
I will not abide it. I will not abide it.
So maybe the three of us can just come forward with bringing forth a process for this council to consider, and then we can move forward as far as saying, yes, this is how we're going to ask city members.
One of the three of you come back to us with exactly how you think we should proceed. But I'm fine. I second Daniel's motion. Let's go ahead and establish this. You guys come back with what it looks like, what the committee looks like. Make sure it's focused on actually helping us address the challenges outlined in Dr. Logson's report. If we can't get it to a point where we're actually pushing towards some solutions, and most of these solutions, I might add, including the report, say they were macro. But it's so interesting, guys. I've done presentations, I know Daniel has as well, and I think some of you others have too, since the report came out. They're broad comments about let's get rid of targeted tax breaks. I'm not sure that there are any tax breaks in the city that aren't targeted, or in the state for that matter. A targeted tax break brought Bowdoin to North Charleston. A targeted tax break brought BMW to Greenville. Targeted tax breaks helped redevelop the entire Vista and Main Street. Let's just make sure we come back with some very specific resolutions that we can act on, that the school district and county, and most importantly, the state can act on. So why don't the three of you come on back with something that makes some sense for everyone. But as we go forward, you all, let's just make sure we get some real actionable, thoughtful items that help us increase and improve the competitiveness of the Midlands, because I do not agree with the fact that we're not competitive. I fundamentally disagree with that.
Yep.
And an objective report that some points has. I'll stop right there. We'll move to the previous question. Clerk, call a roll.
What's the question?
I had a final.
Establishing the committee, but the three of you are going to come on back with what exactly the way forward looks like. All right. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickerman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
You're on mute, Ed.
Yes.
Mr. Duvall,
Aye.
Red.
Mr. Vine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Let's
Thank
drive
you.
some real bottom up and top down solutions, y'all. Solutions. We cannot admire the issue. So thank y'all.
Did I
Any
mention
other-
this is political season?
It is, Howard. Definitely so.
Mr. Mayor, I gotta say something. Howard,
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
I can care less about the politics of this. Of course, we can't get around it. My concern is, at the end of the day, when we tend to move and we talk about competitiveness or tax relief that we're going to be working towards, so forth and so on. It is the John Q. Public, the little people in this city that I'm concerned about. They are not, for the most part, in a position to sometimes absorb what we're saying, and understand the strategy, the impact, short-term, long-term. And we've got, and I'm keeping in mind where this city is going, what it looks like now, and where it's probably going to look like down the road. It's still the little folks that aren't able to sit down at the table and take policymakers on. That is a big problem. I just, my fear is that this city does not go the way that Charleston has gone. And the little folks tend to disappear and don't want them taxed out and that sort of thing. And participatory government is the thing that prevents that kind of stuff from happening. You can't sweep that under the rug at this point in time in the history of this city.
Mr. Rickman?
I've had more conversations lately with a lot of the young small business people, and an opportunity to protect their business would be fantastic. And this is what it is. Some people want to throw bombs; they're going to throw bombs. But my feeling is, and it has been since we started this is a way for the future, and it helps a lot of small business people that are the back community, plain and simple. And I think we can find the right working committee and the right criteria, and it may not be what Dr. Goodlodson has put forth. It may be a combination of something, and it may be some things we haven't thought of. But if we don't address it, then I think we hurt ourselves, period. And
we must be focused on solutions that actually help small businesses in Columbia. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if those issues are addressed or have been addressed in the tax study, but a separate effort, maybe through Mr. Davis, through your committee around small businesses, is probably where a lot of our energy should be directed. I look forward to the discussion over the next several months, and look forward to providing informed input as well. Any other referrals to committee or reports from committee?
Reverend McDowell, did you want to raise any updates regarding the Administrative Law Committee efforts? I know you and I need to have probably a follow-up discussion. So maybe next time would be better.
Ms. Wilson, I was going to suggest that we do that.
Okay.
The report will be, I think, this next report will be more comprehensive and ready to act. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Would you resend again, Teresa and Erica, for everyone's consideration, the top lines in the executive summary of Dr. Goodlodson's report to everyone? So we'll have that in hand, you or Jeff Palin, what have you. So we'll have it top of mind again. And I know we have at least 2 callers in the queue before we go to the executive session. So Ms. Devine, did you have something else to say? Yeah.
I was just going to say, along those same lines, Mr. Mayor, a few business leaders mentioned to me that the state chamber, maybe about 2 years ago, actually had 3 economists do like a reconciliation of a report. I've not had a chance to get my hand on that. I don't know if you have, if you could do that, but that might be also helpful and instructive. A lot of things I understand came out of that was the need for the state to address taxes.
They did one under Ted Pitt's leadership, and they did one, I think several years ago, or maybe less than a decade ago or so, Howard. I forget what it was on the same issue, but all the most pressing issues, yes, being state policy issues. Yes. I'm pretty sure I have a copy of the electronic version of it. And if not, we can track one down from the chamber. Ms. Devine. All right. If there are no more committee issues, let's see what citizens have to say. You got some calls in the queue, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. We'll add the first caller to the meeting.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, yes, I'm Michael Bailey. I had a question. Why did you guys use an executive session to discuss extending the mask ordinance earlier in the month? Well, last month.
It's a issue for legal counsel, Mr. Bailey, and it's our prerogative. Only our prerogative, our responsibility to do so, Bailey. This is not the
It's your
day.
prerogative. The Congress have an opinion. I mean, Duval doesn't have to consider the will of the public on this thing.
Finish your 3 minutes, Mr. Bailey.
Yes. Why won't you guys discuss this publicly? You keep doing everything in secret. You know the public doesn't want this, like you said. Re-election's coming up. You guys might want to remember that. People do not want this.
Thank you, Mr.
Also,
Bailey.
I have a quick question for Rickman. Wait, I saw 3 minutes. Well, the rest of it. I want to know why Rickman changed his opinion on mask and COVID restrictions being unconstitutional.
You can keep on talking, please. It's your prerogative.
I just asked my question just now.
I've heard you ask Mr. Berkman the question about 4 times, and I think he's probably gotten 15 more from you on the emails we've seen. I think he's answered it, or maybe he has not, but I'm sure you guys can figure that out. Okay. Any other statements or comments?
Yes. Why are you guys wanting to distribute COVID business aid by race?
Excuse me?
You guys were talking about distributing COVID business aid by race a few weeks ago.
No, we have
Why
not.
are you guys wanting that?
Oh, no, we did not, Mr. Bailey. That's patently false. Any other comments or questions?
Yep. I guess I can mail you the session where you talk about it.
If you saw an accurate accounting of small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses that receive stimulus funding from the city, then that's probably what you're referring to. But you know, you might be entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts. Any other statements or questions?
He hung up, Mayor.
All right. Bye-bye, Mr. Bailey. Who else?
I'll add the next caller.
And Daniel, that's the last time I'm defending you. Next.
I've answered his question so many times.
200. I've heard you answer 200 times, so I'm not sure what else you can do. What else you got, Madam Clerk?
Okay, we've added a caller.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Earl Udsey, and I live in the Meadowfield, South Meadowfield, Hampton Hill area. And we have been discussing the African American Mural Project. In fact, we've gotten some input from the communities. And there have been several concerns that have been raised about this. Number one is the concern that a mural specifically at the Woodland Community Center would be viewed as urban art in a residential neighborhood. And there's some concern about that concept. Number two, that the mural and its message is largely lost on this community. I know that there is the purpose of educating the community, but I will tell you this, that the opinion from some is that you put this mural up without any adequate explanation, then people are just going to largely ignore it. And that'll probably be true of the other 3 neighborhoods. Number 3, that the murals would be more appropriate inside the community centers or be a part of a touring art show throughout the city than be put on the side of the wall. The concerns about this are that 1, weathering, 2, vandalism, 3, graffiti. which leads into another concern, is the upkeep of each mural over time. Will the mural be regularly kept up? Who will pay for the upkeep? And who's going to prevent the vandalism and the graffiti? If it's put inside the community centers, then there will be adequate supervision and explanation. Another concern is that the city council has largely railroaded this project through without adequate input from the community. There's collective wisdom when city council taps into community input. Better ideas come forth, more judicious decision-making, more efficient and money-saving ideas can be brought forth.
Mr. Uchi still here?
It's largely railroaded this project through without adequate input from the community.
That must be the recording.
When city council.
Or someone's online.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Yuchi? All right. Okay.
I want to thank,
Hi,
I
Mayor.
do know, yeah, well, I do know, I'm not sure we'll be able to address all of Mr. Uchi's concerns, or if he had a chance to view the entirety of the presentation earlier. I know some of the questions were answered in the presentation.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Uchi not only had the opportunity to meet with us personally, where we went through answers to most all of his questions prior to today.
Yeah, Mr. Rickman mentioned that there'd been significant dialogue, but for folks who don't know that, I think it's just obviously the educational component was discussed, as well as deferred maintenance as well. Please, Ms. McDowell,
were they the same questions when you met with him, Ms. Wilson? Same questions, same concern?
Yes, sir, for the most part. I mean, I think we've subsequently, there are emails where ACM Simons has responded to those questions as well.
Were they adequately answered?
From my perspective, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
all right, do we have any other citizens who decided to speak?
No, sir.
All right.
So we have to vote.
More public input, Mr. Duval.
You ready?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session for receipt of legal advice related to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to 30-4-70A2 COVID-19 2021 legislative overview, discussion of negotiations and proposed contractual arrangements pursuant to code 30-4-70A2 1 Columbia, and receipt of legal advice related to pending, threatened, or potential claim pursuant to 30-4-70A2 Constant Car Wash.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Previous call roll.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Aye.
Mr. Vine, Mr.
right,
Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Webb, Mayor Benjamin.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.